Volunteers, working together. Throughout this training, you will be learning all about the Anti-Cruelty Society's volunteer programs and volunteer services department. But before we jump in, let's talk a little bit about what a volunteer is. According to Webster's Dictionary, a volunteer is a person who voluntarily offers himself or herself for a service or undertaking. It can also be a person who performs a service willingly and without pay. But what makes our volunteers here at the Anti-Cruelty Society different and unique? Well, our volunteers are a number of different things, including animal lovers, skilled professionals, future potential staff members, and engaged parts of our community. Now that we have a basic definition of what a volunteer is down, why don't we look at the Volunteer Services Department and what we're all about. The Volunteer Services Department offers many different kinds of programs for people looking to get involved somehow with the Anti-Cruelty Society. Can you think of a couple of volunteer programs that you may already know about? The Anti-Cruelty Society offers a wide variety of programs for people who are looking to get involved in our community of caring, whether it's coming in on-site to help as a cat adopts volunteer or helping from home in either our foster program or do-it-yourself donations projects. There's lots of different ways people can get involved. View this list and the list on the next page to just see a sampling of some of the ways people can help. The Volunteer Services Department here at the Anti-Cruelty Society is in charge of recruiting, training, and maintaining a high-integrity volunteer workforce. Here's a look at some of our accomplishments from the past year. So what does it take to become a volunteer at the Anti-Cruelty Society? Let's find out. People who are looking to volunteer with us on-site must complete 4 different steps. Let's take a look at them individually. The first step is completing a volunteer application. These can be found on our website at www.anticruelty.org. A volunteer application is important because it allows the Volunteer Services Department to make the best possible match between applicants and interested programs. The second step towards becoming an Anti-Cruelty Society volunteer is to attend a volunteer orientation. Held throughout each month, these sessions allow volunteers an opportunity to get to know us as an organization and review our history, mission, safety details, and the various roles we have available to our volunteer team. The third step in our volunteer onboarding process is for a volunteer to attend their in-shelter training session. This hands-on, program-specific training is led by an experienced volunteer trainer in their area. Held in small groups throughout the month, these sessions allow volunteers a chance to really get to know the ins and outs of their program. And at the end of the session, the trainer grades their performance to ensure they are ready to move on to their 4th and final step. The 4th and final step towards becoming an official Anti-Cruelty Society volunteer is to complete what we call a solo shift. This is where the volunteer comes in once on their own to test drive all of the skills they've learned for their specific program. The volunteer wears a special trainee badge which helps to signify their new status to other volunteers as well as staff. If you see a volunteer coming in wearing a trainee badge, please warmly greet them and let them know that you are available to offer any assistance or guidance that they may need. So now that you know what it takes to become a volunteer, let's talk about why volunteers are awesome and how staff can work together to embrace this special team of shelter helpers. So what is it that makes volunteers so special and important to the Anti-Cruelty Society? Here are a few benefits. How can we as staff members help volunteers feel appreciated? First, we can create a welcoming environment for volunteers as they enter the building. Greet everyone, introduce yourself, or if you're too busy to introduce yourself up front, go ahead and wave or make eye contact. You can guide new volunteers or volunteers coming in for their solo session. Give them updates about their area or specific animals that you're working with. And, most importantly, share successes, adoption stories, and other things that will help validate their efforts. Another way that staff can help embrace volunteers is by sharing important information. In addition to talking about recent adoptions, you can also fill them in on new policies. Some volunteers only come in once a month and so may not be looped in on things as they change. You can help them focus on certain animals who are needing additional socialization, training, or enrichment. You can talk to them about upcoming special events. Or, most importantly, let them know how they can assist you that day during their visit. There are so many different things we can do to help volunteers feel embraced within the organization, and the most important of these is to give them recognition, and on a daily basis. Easy ways to do that can include getting to know their names, telling them that they're awesome and saying thank you, maybe even writing them a little note card or compliment card and posting it on the office board. There's lots of different ways in which staff members can reach out and become creative in letting the volunteers know that they are appreciated. Now that you've learned all about volunteer training and different ways we can embrace volunteers, let's talk a little bit about empowering them and the work that they do. Before we talk about how we can empower volunteers, let's discuss some of the common concerns that we as staff members might have. One of these might be that volunteers are quote-unquote untouchable. But this isn't the case. We hold volunteers to the same standards as staff. And if there's a volunteer that's repeatedly making mistakes or not following policies, a manager should be informed. Another common concern might be that volunteers question staff decisions. Asking for insight can actually be a good thing if a volunteer does it appropriately. The problem comes if a volunteer is making you feel uncomfortable with the questions they're asking. If that's the case, direct them to a manager. Another common concern that staff may have is that volunteers are critical, somehow undercover agents for the organization. Volunteers are not spies. Consider them your peers. If it seems that a volunteer doesn't understand something, explain it instead of getting frustrated or creating some kind of a conspiracy theory. Another common concern: volunteers are untrained. But as you've already learned, this is not the case. Volunteers go through rigorous training and supervision before they're quote-unquote set free in their programs. If there is a volunteer that seems to be making mistakes over and over again, that's when it's important to contact a manager so that we can get that volunteer additional training. Now that we've addressed some common concerns staff may have about volunteers, let's talk about how we can work together to empower our volunteer team. The best way to do that is to offer for feedback on a regular basis to volunteers who work in your area. You can do that by following the three C's: coaching, complimenting, and then correcting. Coaching volunteers allows staff members to give direction and feedback when needed. You can prevent miscommunication by sharing information in advance. Don't assume the volunteer knows because they're there that day. It's up to you to inform them. You can highlight your shared goal, whether that's recovering additional animals in the clinic, helping visitors, or helping to place an animal in a new home. Remember, they're part of your team, so feel empowered yourself to coach them on a regular basis. After coaching a specific volunteer, you'll want to give them a compliment before going into the correction. You can do this by thanking them for trying to help that day, expressing your appreciation for all of the service that they've performed, or highlighting one of their strengths. Once you've provided the volunteer with some general coaching and then a compliment, it's time for you to give a specific correction. But there's a few guidelines you should follow. The first one is to do it in private. Don't correct a volunteer in front of visitors or in front of staff or other volunteers, as this may be embarrassing for them. Identify the positive with your compliment and then the problem, not vice versa. Make sure that when you're giving some kind of feedback or correcting a mistake that you're doing it immediately. Don't wait until a day or a week or a month has gone by. Keep the mistake correction short and sweet. And always be respectful and give them opportunities to ask questions. And then follow up with that volunteer, maybe upon their next visit, and ask them if they had any remaining questions or if they needed additional tips towards that specific issue. Now that we've reviewed what it takes to empower a volunteer by coaching them, complimenting them, and then correcting them, we can discuss a little bit more about what happens if things really go awry. It's incredibly important for staff members to speak up if a volunteer is falling short in their performance. Don't ignore the problem or turn a blind eye. Remember, unaddressed little issues can turn into big ones very quickly. So if you see any inappropriate behavior, comments, conduct, or animal handling, it's important to notify your supervisor immediately. When addressing a volunteer performance issue with your manager, be sure to give them a detailed account of what happened. Your manager can then follow up with the volunteer services department so the issue can be further addressed as well as documented. If your manager is not available at the time of the incident, be sure to write down your notes as well as the volunteer's name for future reference. So you've contacted your manager about a volunteer performance issue, and they've handed that issue off to the volunteer services department. So what happens now? There's a few things the volunteer services department may do. That includes offering additional training for that volunteer or providing conflict resolution in conjunction with the human resources department. If a volunteer is making a repeated mistake, we may decide to restrict their volunteer activities or place them on probation. In instances where a volunteer's performance does not improve, they may be permanently suspended from volunteering with the society. It's important to note that volunteers undergo the same disciplinary process as paid staff members: a verbal warning, written warning, and then termination. The Anti-Cruelty Society has a number of resources available to staff members beyond this training module that will help you work better with your volunteer teams. This includes the Volunteer Services Department as well as your department management team. We have a weekly volunteer announcement newsletter for which staff are welcome to sign up. The newsletter provides weekly updates on volunteer activities, programs, and policy changes. The Anti-Cruelty Society website, as well as our intranet, also offer a wide variety of resources staff members may be interested in seeing that are volunteer-related. This includes volunteer training videos, program manuals, as well as a list of prominent volunteer photos. In addition to the above-listed resources, staff members are encouraged to review the Relationship Guidelines and Expectations sheet found within the Employee Handbook. This important document outlines the various expectations staff members are adhered to in regards to volunteer relations. Thank you for taking the time to complete the Working Together volunteer module. If you have any questions in regards to our volunteer programs or services, please feel free to speak with your department supervisor or a member of the volunteer services team.